So, one time I bombed in front of an audience of 4,000 people. Another time, I took a job I knew I was going to hate before I even started. And another time, I shit myself while eating a dodgy-looking French dip sandwich.
Why, that's the most diabolical Krabby Patty ever spawned.
Look, failure is everywhere. You can either wallow in it and have your own little pity party, or you can deal with it effectively. And in this video, I'm going to walk through 5 steps to manage failure really well. But if you're new around here, my name is Jono, and I've helped hundreds of companies and thousands of people build thriving online and in-person communities. So here's a question for you. When you fail, do you experience the following symptoms? Fear, anxiety, a sensation of a coiled spring in your chest, an increased consumption of Wendy's cheeseburgers or taquitos? Well, these are completely normal reactions to failure because failure triggers an emotional and logical responsiveness. The first thing that we need to do is we need to take a step back from that sensation so we can plot a logical path forward. So for me, driving is how I do this. I like getting out of my office where I do, actual work, getting some fresh air. And this might sound a little bit odd, but sitting in a room, albeit a mobile room, where I'm by myself, where I can speak out loud to myself, and I don't sound like a crazy person. And what I actually do is walk through the failure, what happened, and I talk out loud to myself about, what do I observe in that failure? What can I learn from it? And how can I think about moving forward from it? And it's amazing how cathartic this can be. But for you, it might be a different place. It might be taking a shower or having a bath or having a sauna. It might be going for a walk with your dog or something else. The key thing is we've got to get away from the environment where we will experience the failure, such as in your office, into a place where we can speak openly, where we can think about it, or we can start processing. Now, even after that, you might still feel a bit stressed and in a bit of a funk. So what we need to do here is to re-inspire ourselves. And this is very simple. Go grab a laptop, go to YouTube, and type in the people who motivate and inspire you, people who've been on a similar journey to the one that you're on, who've got words of wisdom to share. Now, this is incredible for getting you out of this holding pattern and helping you to move forward. For me, it's people like Mark Cuban and Donald Miller and Seth Godin. I always listen to these people when I feel a little bit stuck. Okay, so everything we've talked about so far has been about getting us into the right mental mindset so we can manage failure constructively. But now what? How do we actually take that failure, learn from it, and hopefully prevent it from happening again in the future? Well, this is where we're going to break this down into 2 different parts. One is on information gathering, and then the other one is on rapid iteration. Now, one of the great benefits of failure and why I get weirdly excited when I fail is because now we have a body on the ground that we can walk around and inspect and gather data from. When you succeed, it feels really good, but it doesn't give us a huge amount of data. But failure tells us a lot about what happened and then how we can optimize and iterate from it. All right, so let's look at a practical example of this. Let's say you run an online event like a workshop or a webinar and barely anybody shows up to it. Well, we could look at the landing page and see how many people who hit that landing page actually registered to join the event. We could look at your email reminders, how many people open them and click on them. We could look at how many people actually show up to the live event, how long they stuck around the live event and where they dropped off. We could look at how many people clicked on the call to action and consumed it. Even an event that seemingly went really poorly, there's all of this data that we can gather, we can peer into, we can learn from, so we can iterate later on. Now, the key thing here is that we reframe the data so it isn't the end game. It's just one ingredient in a bigger story, in a bigger journey. So to illustrate this, imagine that you're a detective and somebody met their untimely demise behind the back of a Taco Bell, right? So you're interviewing a bunch of people who are suspects to see who might be the murderer. Now, you're talking to one of the suspects and they claim they're in a different location at the time of the murder, but as you're talking to them, a receipt falls out their pocket. You take a look at it, and it's got an order for a cheesy gordita crunch, and the timestamp for that was at the time of the murder. Now, if you're an actual detective, that receipt is a clue. It's a piece of data that points very concretely towards the suspect who is likely the murderer. Think of your data in the same way. So go back to our example earlier on. If you run an online event and barely anyone shows up, if you look at the landing page, and a relatively small number of people who go to that landing page don't sign up for the event, then we know that that is one piece in the puzzle that we need to fix, that we need to improve. Alrighty, so now it's time to get to work and figure out what are the next practical steps we're going to take in response to the failure. And to do this, we're going to run a post-mortem. Now, a post-mortem is where you take that overall failure, you break it down into small individual pieces, you look at the data that maps to those pieces, and then we figure out which of these pieces we want to optimize and improve first. Okay, so I'm going to continue the example from earlier on that we ran an online event. Not that many people showed up. It was a bit of a bump. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch out onto the board, and I have a board I can write on here. But you can use a piece of paper or an online tool like Miro or Notion or Coda or Google or whatever. I'm going to sketch out onto the board the different components of that event, right? So first of all, we drove traffic from social media to a landing page. And then when people signed up on that landing page, we'll start sending them a bunch of emails to remind them of the event. And then there was the live session itself that they could join. And then at the end of the live session, there was a call to action. And this was a button that someone could click on to take them to another tool or another resource as the next step of the journey. Okay, so that's the overall event broken down into individual pieces. Now, earlier on, we talked about an information gathering phase and then a rapid iteration phase, right? So before we can figure out the rapid iteration side of things, we need to take the information that we have available to us and map that out to these individual pieces, right? So for the landing page, 6% of people who hit that landing page converted into registered attendees. For the emails that we sent out, 24% of people opened those emails. 1% of those people clicked on the links in those emails. For the live session, 42% of people attended the session. Those were registered attendees. And then 58% of people who did show up to the session watched it all the way to the end. And for those people who did get to the end where we talked about the call to action, 10% of people clicked on the call to action in the session and went to the next step of the journey. Okay, so that's all the data that we've got available to us. Now, as a general rule, when trying to improve anything, you want to start with the pieces earlier on in the process, right? So for example, it makes no sense to improve the call to action in an online event if people are not even registering for the event in the first place. So when I look at the data that I've got in front of me, 6% of people converting on the landing page doesn't seem like a lot to me. It seems like way too few people. Now, I know that as a general rule, 30 to 40% of people who hit your landing page should be converting. So 6% is way lower than it should be. So this, in my mind, would focus our efforts on that landing page. How do you make the headline stronger? How do you maybe put a video in there to talk about the session that you're going to be running? Maybe talk about the overall value. Maybe take some pull quotes and testimonials from people who came to your first event to show where they talk about how great the event is, right? Focus on that. And then the next step that we're going to have in the journey is to try and get that 6% goal a little bit higher later on. If I look at this as well, when I look at the emails, for example, 24% open rate is pretty good, but a 1% click rate is not that great, okay? Ideally, your click rate should be 2 to 4%. So maybe we can improve how we present those links inside of those emails and make them a little bit more appetizing to click on, or give people more of a sense of curiosity to click on those links. If we look a little bit later on here, I think 42% of people showing up to the live session is pretty good. 58% of people staying to the end of the session is not great, okay? So I'd want to look at the data inside of my events platform to see where they dropped off. For example, I use a tool called Webinar Jam, and Webinar Jam will show you at what points people start dropping off at the session, and then I know that's the part of the session that I need to improve. Now, I think I know what you're thinking right now. But Jono, how am I supposed to know what those target numbers should be? You said for landing pages, it should be like a 35 or 40% conversion rate for people who hit the landing page, but how am I supposed to know that? What are the target numbers that I should have for the things that I'm working on? Well, there's a couple of things you can think about here. So first of all, in many cases, there are industry standard benchmarks that you can look up on Google that will tell you some good starting points to focus on, okay? And that's a great place to get started. But even if you can't find those benchmarks, so if those benchmarks don't exist, there is a key piece of wisdom I want to share with you. And this piece of wisdom is going to change the way you think about goals, revolutionize the way in which you drive results. It's going to make you 10 times more attractive to men, to women, to airline students, to chihuahuas being pushed around in little trolleys in posh shopping centers.
Okay, we're done.
Ready for this? All you need to do is to make the chart go up and to the right? So if your landing page is currently 6%, let's just try and get it to 10%. And then let's try and get it to 12%. And then let's try and get it to 15%. We don't care really about the numbers. We care about the trend. We just want the trend to be improving and improving and improving. Now, if you want to build an amazing community around your product or service, you want to build consistent growth and engagement, you should totally check out my Community Leadership Core Accelerator. So we provide hands-on coaching, training, and accountability. It's all tailored directly to your company, and it helps you to deliver really clear, consistent results every single quarter with way less stress and anxiety. If you're interested in this, check out the link in the video description down there, where you can book a call with us and we'll listen to what you want to achieve, what some of the challenges you're having, and we'll provide you some really concrete next steps inside of that call. At the beginning of this video, I said to you, there's two ways in which you can manage failure. You can either wallow in it and have your own pity party, or you can do something about it and get out there, right? And so far in this video, we've talked about how to reframe failure in our heads. We've talked about how to identify the different components of the failure and use data to figure out what our next step should be. But all of that is lost unless you actually get out there and do it again, right? And this is tough because when we fail, it feels awful. We feel like we're not very good at what we do. We feel like failures. And we question our abilities and whether we can even do this in the first place. But that's giving into it, right? So using my example earlier on of an online event that barely anyone shows up to, is get out there and do another online event in 2 or 3 weeks. If you screwed up a presentation in front of your peers, do another one in a month. If no one joins your new community after the launch, keep growing it tomorrow, right? This is absolutely fundamental in making this stuff work. But here's the key thing. I don't want you to focus on achieving goals. I want you to focus on delivering quick wins. Now, there's a key distinction here. Goals have a ton of baggage attached to them. Ever since we've been kids, we've been setting goals and in many cases not achieving them. And our subconscious is well aware of this. Now, when you're recovering from a failure, it's tempting to set big, brave, bold, and ambitious goals because we're kind of embarrassed by the failure and we want to really demonstrate that we're going to nail this and fix this and get this moving forward. But this is often not particularly realistic and not very viable. So what we want to focus on instead is generating a few small wins that give us the confidence that we're moving in the right direction. So to continue the example of an online event that we ran where barely anyone showed up, let's just look at our landing page. We had a 6% conversion rate. Let's just try to get it to 10%. When we look at the attendees who joined the session live, 58% of people stayed to the end of the session. Let's try to get it to 70%. These are small little changes that we can make to the landing page and to the content of our session. And if that number goes up and to the right, then we know we're heading in the right direction. And this is what I mean by rapid iteration. We keep running those online events. We don't give in to fear of failure. We keep measuring the different pieces of the work that we're doing and try to improve those numbers just a little bit each time. And when you do this, two magical things happen. First of all, your work gets better and better and better. You're gathering information and data, you're iterating regularly, and the results will show. But secondly, it protects you from failure because failure is no longer something that can hurt you, that can harm you. It actually becomes your co-pilot, where you use it as a mechanism to get better and better at what you do. So let's commit to action right now. What I'd like you to do is go into the comment box of this video right now, not later on, but right now. Think of a failure you've had recently and type in one practical thing you're going to do to start on that journey to improve on that failure, okay? That small, little public commitment can work wonders. But thank you for watching my video. I hope it was useful. If you've got any questions or any comments about this, get them down there. I'll see you in the next one.